Hey there everybody, Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd. I've been collecting video game consoles for over 10 years now. I got some really good deals on some of these and some of these not so much. One of my favorite parts about retro video game collecting is the modern upgrades that you can get to go along with these retro consoles. Of course, I'm talking about EverDrives and optical drive emulators. These ODEs allow you to replace the aging disk drive of most of these consoles with an SD card reader. Something similar can be done with cartridge-based consoles in the EverDrive line of flash cartridges. As someone who's tinkered around with emulation quite a bit, I can say that this is honestly my favorite way to play video games, on the original hardware, with modern upgrades that allow us to enjoy the entire library and history of that console. I've got 26 video game consoles hooked up in my living room right now, ready to go. Most of these are retro video game consoles, but we've got some modern ones as well. So thanks to the RetroTink 4K, which is a high-quality 4K video upscaler designed to be used with these retro consoles, we can capture footage and talk about some of the best games for each one of these systems. So we're going to go through all 26 consoles, and we're going to pick a runner-up, as well as what I feel is the very best game on that system. Keep in mind that this is what I think is the best game, and it likely might not fit your agenda on what the best game is, but I'd be happy to hear what your favorite games are for each of these consoles in the comments section below. So I've put together this list in no particular order of all the consoles that I have, the runner-up best game, and the best game. So in no particular order, let's go ahead and get started because we've got 52 games to talk about. Starting with the Sega Master System. Really cool console. By no means my favorite. I grew up with the Sega Genesis. That was my favorite console as a kid. So I didn't get into the Sega Master System library until much later. And admittedly, I haven't taken too much of a deep dive into this console, but I do have two favorites that I really like to go back to every once in a while. And starting with the runner-up, we've got Black Belt. This is a really interesting side-scrolling beat-em-up, really kind of a primitive beat-em-up for the time. But still, it's a really unique game, and you've got punches and kicks, and that's pretty much it. So you go along this side-scrolling level, and you've got a boss fight at the end of it, with some, mid-bosses here and there. It's a really unique game for the system, and I think this is probably the one that I go back to the most, if we're being real. The Master System is a console that's got a ton of flaws, such as having the pause button on the console itself instead of the controller. The controller can kind of be a mushy-gushy mess with the D-pad and the buttons. However, if you have the system, you can use some wireless controllers with it, as well as just a regular old Sega Genesis controller, and you'll have a much better time. The winner, of course, has to go to Wonder Boy in Monsterland. This is such a wonderful side-scrolling RPG of sorts, if you want to call it that. It's a very unique game, to say the least, and admittedly I haven't gotten too deep into it, but from what I've played so far, I have to say that it's really fun. It's probably the best game on the system, if we're being real, just based on what you can do in it alone. For the time, this is a really unique RPG for the system, and it still looks great today. Now we're going way ahead into the future, talking about the original Nintendo Switch, not the Switch 2, that's coming later in this video. But first things first, the runner-up for the Nintendo Switch has to be Mario Tennis Aces. I'm a huge Mario Tennis fan, and that's no secret on my channel. I've streamed Mario Tennis, I've done videos on tennis games in general. Tennis games, I feel, are a super niche thing that has a cult following, but the people that are into those tennis games are hardcore gamers who just love a good round of video tennis. So Mario Tennis Aces is the only Mario Tennis game that came out on the Nintendo Switch, the original one, mind you, and it's a pretty good game of tennis. I really do enjoy it. To be honest, the Nintendo Switch was never my favorite console, and we got a lot of third-party stuff on it, which was surprising from a Nintendo console. I'm super into Mario Tennis, so much so that I would choose this as my runner-up. Now, Mario Tennis Aces is not my favorite tennis game by any means, but it is a ton of fun, and I really do enjoy it, and we had a lot of fun playing it with my group of friends. That's kind of our thing. We get together one night a week and we play some Mario Tennis. And admittedly, we tend to play the Mario Tennis on the Nintendo 64 the most. However, I didn't get really super deep into the mechanic in Mario Tennis Aces. Maybe that's just me, I don't know, but I didn't like the fighting game aspect of it, which is strange coming from me because I'm a huge fighting game fan, but it just never felt at home to me for Mario Tennis Aces. I'd love to know what you guys think about that in the comment section below, but me personally, I always turned all that special power stuff off for this game and just enjoyed the tennis part. And the winner for the Nintendo Switch is Splatoon 2 and 3. I couldn't decide between them because they're basically the same game with a couple of upgrades on Splatoon 3, but this was a very surprising game for me to enjoy. I didn't think I was going to like it so much, but it's a Nintendo IP, and basically it's a third-person shooter, for lack of a better term. I mean, that's really what this is, but I think it's 4-on-4. You've got teams of 4 that are playing against each other, but the object of the game is not necessarily to get the most eliminations. You know, it's like a team deathmatch situation. The object is not really to eliminate the enemy team. The object is to get the most paint on the floor. So you've got like red and blue or green and pink. It doesn't really matter. The colors just kind of show up randomly. You can't really pick that. But you've got randomly generated colors for your team, and you shoot paint on the ground. Sometimes you've got paint brushes and stuff, and you've got special moves and all that good stuff that you can find in these typical third-person shooters these days. But this one is really unique. Obviously, it's meant for children, which, you know, that's Nintendo in general. But I really did have a great time with this game when I would play it multiplayer on the Nintendo Switch. This is one of the games that I actually spent the most time with on this system, believe it or not. It's a ton of fun, but it does have issues these days with multiplayer and the lobbies. You know, you could be in the game and all of a sudden somebody quits or they go inactive and then the entire game is done. We can't play the game anymore, which is a huge bummer. That really cuts down on the time that you have to play the game, and it kind of sucks to have to spend most of that time waiting for a match that will actually go to completion. But that being said, as a concept, I do love this game. I just wish it was a little bit more thought out in the in-game part of it, because we're nearing the end of life, admittedly, to Splatoon 3. I imagine there's another Splatoon game going to come out for the Nintendo Switch 2 pretty soon, but until then, I will still enjoy Splatoon 3 when I can. Now we're moving on to the PlayStation 5. This is kind of an odd one to talk about considering that the console isn't done yet, you know, so I haven't experienced the full library and nobody else has either at this point. But so far I can say that my runner-up for the best game on the PlayStation 5 has to be Resident Evil 9. I've played this game through to completion. I got it on launch, and it is such a throwback to Resident Evil fans. We really enjoy having Leon back in his old man state, even though he's not quite 50 yet, but he still kicks ass at his age, and it is so much fun. Now, you'll have to excuse this guerrilla-style footage, because I do have a way to capture PlayStation 5, but it's not that easy to do so, because behind my television I have a plethora of wires and stuff that's connected to my RetroTink 4K, so the priority for captures is always going to be my retro stuff, and I can change that. It's just having to move my television. So I hope you'll forgive me for this guerrilla-style footage for some of these modern consoles. The good stuff is coming, though, with the retro stuff. And of course, the winner on the PlayStation 5 goes to Ghost of Tsushima. Now, admittedly, this started on the PS4, I believe, but it is such a gorgeous game on the PlayStation 5. Now, I did get the sequel, which is Ghost of Yotei. I've yet to beat that one, but I can say thus far the story is far more engaging in Ghost of Tsushima. The combat's probably a little bit better in the sequel, but Ghost of Tsushima, man, it is such a beautiful story, and by far, to this day, I think one of the most beautiful games, if not the most beautiful game on the system. The textures and everything is just so gorgeous no matter where you're at, and it really looks otherworldly. It's hard to describe it, kind of, you know. Ghost of Tsushima is a must-play if you have a PlayStation 5. It is an open-world game that's actually worth playing. I'm not really into open-world games that much anymore. I just don't have the time for them, and they can feel a little overwhelming when you just want to sit down for half an hour and play a freaking video game. But Ghost of Tsushima is the exception to that. It is such a beautiful game, and you have to check it out on the PlayStation 5. As somebody that played it on the PS4 and then got a PS5 and then upgraded, It's a night and day difference. That 30 frames a second on the PS4 is abysmal compared to that beautiful 60 frames per second, as well as all the upgraded textures and stuff, as well as the upgraded loading times on that SSD on the PS5. It makes a world of difference, man. Loading on that PS4 was not fun. Now moving from scene to scene, it's so much more seamless. I have to recommend Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation 5. Now we're on to the Xbox 360, and I've got two more games for you here. The runner-up for the Xbox 360 is a really cool game called Syndicate. Now, admittedly, this is a multi-platform game. I believe it was on the PlayStation 3 as well. But, you know, with this console generation, there weren't that many exclusives, and I'll have to apologize multiple times in this video for choosing a game that isn't an exclusive, but you have to remember that this is just my experience with these consoles and what I enjoyed on them personally. I'm sure if I got Syndicate on the PS3, I would have enjoyed it there as well, but the Xbox 360 is where I first played it, and then I beat it on that system as well. This is a very unique first-person shooter with an interesting story. What I love about this game and what really sets it apart from other first-person shooters of the time is just how organic and real the sound effects are. The sound in this game is just out of this world. Crazy realism, man. It sounds like you're really shooting a gun. You've got some interesting futuristic mechanics that aren't so much in the world of realism, such as controlling your enemy's minds and doing all sorts of weird mind chip stuff. I won't spoil it for you. You just have to know that it's not as crazy as you might think. It actually kind of makes sense in this world. But the gunplay is where it's at in this game for sure, and it is one of the best first-person shooters that I've played, especially in that time period. And the winner for the Xbox 360 goes to Virtua Tennis 4. I'm a huge fan of video tennis, as we've talked about before, so there's going to be a few tennis games in this video. Virtua Tennis 4, as the making of this video, is the latest iteration of a tennis game that we've had from Sega. Unfortunately, that is the truth. Virtua Tennis 4 is the last Virtua Tennis game that we got, and I think it came out in 2011, which is the year that I graduated high school. So it's been quite some time since we've had a really good Virtua Tennis game come out, and I wish they would make another one. We got Top Spin 4 and Top Spin 5, or Top Spin 2K25, I should say. And those are great, but it's nice to have that balance of tennis simulator as well as a tennis arcade game, and Virtua Tennis is the best one when it comes to arcade tennis. And the era in which this came out was a really strong era for tennis players, real-life tennis players such as Juan Martín del Potro, Fernando Gonzalez, both huge forehands on those guys, as well as the big three. We've got Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal. So having all those characters in this game at this time was really the perfect lineup. And it's such a fun game because you get to go through and pick each and every character that has their different characteristics and abilities and stuff, their strengths and weaknesses. It's a great game of tennis, and I highly recommend it, even if you're not into tennis games. Now we're moving on to the PlayStation 4. Again, these are not exclusives, but these are the games that I really enjoyed on the PS4. First up, the runner-up is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. We're throwing it back to the Symphony of the Night style gameplay, albeit with a 2D/3D presentation. Bloodstained, of course, comes from the original creator of Castlevania, but he's doing his own thing now without the Castlevania name. And I mean, it plays exactly like Castlevania with some new additions. It's a really, really fun Metroidvania style game. I know that term is being thrown around all over the place. Everybody's making a Metroidvania game now, but this one is definitely worth playing. I had a lot of fun with this. I'd be curious to know if you guys have ever played this one before. Being a Castlevania fan, have you ever checked out Bloodstained Ritual of the Night? Let me know in the comments section below. And of course, the winner for the PlayStation 4 has to go to Streets of Rage 4. This is bar none the best beat 'em up ever made, and I will die on that hill. In 2020, we were blessed with a sequel to Streets of Rage 3, albeit Sega didn't really have much to do with it. They kind of handed the reins off to .emu and a few other developers. I think Lizard Cube was involved in this as well. This is such a wonderful beat 'em up. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. You've got multiple characters as well as all the legacy characters from Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3, with all the different difficulty modes, including Mania and now Mania Plus. There is infinite amounts of replayability, and that goes hand in hand with the new survival mode, which is basically just a roguelike mode that they added in DLC much later on after the initial release. If you've never played Streets of Rage 4, then you haven't played the best beat 'em up ever made. And It's as simple as that. Recently, I let the cat out of the bag that even though I made a video talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 and how it's not for me, I found myself purchasing one. For one reason, and one reason only, and I think you probably know what that is, but this isn't the runner-up game that I'm talking about. That game is the winner that we'll talk about here in a second. The runner-up, as of right now, of course, because we're still in the beginning stages of the Nintendo Switch 2's lifespan, Donkey Kong Bonanza. This is a really, really fun platformer that has an interesting take on it compared to some of the other 3D platformers that we play. Donkey Kong, of course, is a massive giant monkey who likes to smash things, and there's a ton of collectibles in this game. Now, admittedly, I have not beaten this game. We're still playing through it quite a bit. We're not exactly at the beginning, but we're a little bit further along than that. I imagine in a few hours we'll be approaching the midway point of the game. So far, so good. It's difficult to pick a best of all time and a runner-up when the console is still this young, but from what I can tell, Donkey Kong Bonanza is my second favorite game on this system so far. And of course, the winner is Mario Tennis Fever. This is an interesting take on Mario Tennis. Instead of just playing tennis with superpowers, you've got superpowers in the rackets themselves. So every character has their own abilities that they're good at, aka Yoshi's obviously fast, Mario is the all-round character, meaning he's pretty decent at everything, and then you've got Bowser, who's obviously going to be very, very strong and powerful, but probably very slow, and then you've got that added effect of the fever rackets, as they call them. All this means is that you can pick a tennis racket that has some sort of ability, like being able to turn the other enemy court into mud if you want to, or you can shoot fireballs out of your racket. There's a ton of different rackets to unlock in this game, and I think, honestly, that's my favorite part of this game, is being able to just play it and unlock everything. I kind of miss that part of video games. Nowadays, you just buy everything. You can, get the season pass or the battle pass or whatever, and then you get cosmetics and stuff, and then you pay a little bit more money and you get access to more of that stuff. I honestly hate that part of modern video gaming. I don't want to be a part of a season to play a video game, and I don't want to have to pay for a pass to do anything. I've already paid for the game in real life, so therefore I should be able to unlock stuff in it, and Mario Tennis Fever thus far has done that beautifully. You get all the characters, and a couple of them have different color skins and stuff like that, and you've got all the rackets and stuff as well. So there's plenty of things to unlock. I've pretty much unlocked just about everything except for a few cosmetics, which is great, but this is a party game. And my friends and I, as well as my girlfriend, we sit down together and we can just play this game for hours. It is such a blast and such a new breath of life into Mario Tennis compared to the original that's on the N64. This one is such a different game, but it's still got that Mario Tennis feel while giving you those upgrades that feel really natural in the progression of Mario Tennis. Now we're on to the Nintendo Wii, admittedly not one of my favorite consoles in the history of video game consoles, but you bet your bippy I had one back in the day, man. Everybody had one of these consoles, from your grandmother to your aunt to everybody. I mean, everybody had to get one of these things because of the bowling stuff and the Wii Sports and all that stuff, man. Everybody had to get their hands on this because this was like the new thing, virtual reality, Of course, it didn't pan out to actually be like that, but using the motion controls and stuff, that was a brand new thing at the time, all the way back in 2006. And it's still a console that many people have fond memories of today. And it's by far the console that you'll find at garage sales and Goodwills and stuff like that. But for me, the two best games that I enjoyed on this system, the runner-up, of course, is Kirby's Epic Yarn for the soundtrack alone. It's basically just a piano-only soundtrack. I mean, you've got other sounds and stuff in there, but it's based on the piano, which is very interesting for a Kirby game. And this art style is very, very unique, having the yarn be a part of the world and everything and having to interact with that yarn. For the most part, it is a very solid Kirby game. You do have some co-op mechanics in there that are pretty decent, but this is a single-player game for sure. And I really enjoyed playing through this all the way through, and that's not typical of me to pick a Kirby game or any Nintendo platformer title and see it all the way through, but for this one I had to for the soundtrack alone. And when I was in Dubai, I got together with a couple of musicians and we did a cover version of the Grassland theme from this game. My buddy Tomo, who was a wonderful violin player, she did such a great job on this, as well as my buddy that plays the bass. I highly encourage you to check out that video. It'll be in the comment section below if you want a breath of some beautiful music covered on acoustic guitar and violin and the bass guitar. I hope you guys check that out. So of course the winner on the Nintendo Wii has to be Wii Sports, because it's probably the best game on the system if we're being real, and I know what it is. It's just pretty sure that the first iteration of the Wii had this bundled in with the system, and then later on you could buy it separately if you wanted to, but people went nuts for this game, man. There's so many like mini games. It's basically just a game to show off what the system was capable of in a tech demo, but it became a really big hit overnight. People just had to get into this to play the bowling and the golf and all the other stuff that was in there. Me personally, I enjoyed the tennis, of course. I had a lot of fun playing the tennis portion of Wii Sports with my family, as I'm sure a lot of you did. And we still go back to it every once in a while just to experience it. But gotta recommend those wrist straps, man, because once you get into that tennis, if it gets intense, you might fling that Wii remote into your television, and I've seen it happen before. Luckily, my television hasn't been damaged by a Wii remote, and hopefully that never happened to you. I think the Nintendo Wii was one of those systems that probably had a couple of games fly under the radar that are real hidden gems because of Wii Sports and other Mario titles that are on that system. So if you have a recommendation for a really good game that's an exclusive Nintendo Wii title, please put that in the comment section below. Moving on to the PlayStation 3, I had so much fun with this console. This was like the first time that we had consoles that we could really grind into the online multiplayer aspect. And, you know, before that, the PlayStation 2 and the Dreamcast had online capabilities, but it wasn't as mainstream as it was on the 360 and the PlayStation 3. And back in that time, I was a PlayStation 3 guy, and I had a buddy that had an Xbox 360, and ultimately he came over to PlayStation because the 360 had that red ring of death fiasco, and he just kind of threw his hands up in the air over it and said, fine, I'll get a PlayStation 3, and then we really got into some games together. Now the runner-up, of course, has to be Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 on that system. And yes, this was also on the 360, but I gotta talk about it here in the PS3 portion of this video because that's where I played the majority of it. Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 were some of the best online multiplayer first-person shooter games that I've ever played in my whole life. It was so much fun. You know, Call of Duty was never for me. I never got into that, but Battlefield had a shred of realism in its gameplay. And you had to use cover, and you have to be smart instead of just running around, you know, shooting everybody. You have to use cover and think about where your enemies are going to be versus where they are now. Battlefield 3 came out in like 2011, which again, that's when I graduated high school. My buddy Jonathan brought his television over, and we sat in my garage during the spring, and we sat out there with both of our televisions and both of our PlayStations hooked up wirelessly to the Wi-Fi, and we played Battlefield 3 for hours and hours and hours. And that's one of my fondest gaming memories because it was a ton of fun, man. It was so much fun leveling up and getting all these new guns and all these new gadgets and stuff and being able to use them with your friends. We still play Battlefield to this day, albeit not as much as we used to. Battlefield 6 is a great game, but it just cannot compare to Battlefield 3 and 4. Those two games are some of the milestones of first-person online multiplayer shooters, in my opinion, first-person shooters. And the winner for my favorite game on the PlayStation 3 is an exclusive. We're finally getting to exclusive now, and that is 3D Dot Game Heroes. This is a very interesting take on a Zelda style, albeit a Link to the Past style Zelda game. This used to be a hidden gem, but a lot of people are really getting into it these days, and it's becoming more well known. The art style is very strange, like Minecraft-y, Lego-y stuff, but they use that style and use the engine to make it look gorgeous with all sorts of lighting effects and stuff. This is a gorgeous game, very, very beautiful game, and I honestly like it a little bit more than I would like a Zelda title that's very similar. So this was actually made, I think, with Atlas and From Software. Yeah, the Dark Souls guys, which is kind of crazy. But this game used to be kind of expensive. Admittedly, I think it's gone down in price quite a bit. But this is probably the best exclusive for the PlayStation 3, in my opinion. You couldn't get it anywhere else at the time, just on the PlayStation 3. I wonder, have you guys ever played 3D Dot Game Heroes? It's got a really stupid name. I'll say that. This name is stupid for this game. And it's probably why a lot of people passed up on it, because they didn't realize that a game called 3D Dot Game Heroes would be a good game. But it is. It's a great game. Now we're moving on to the Wii U, another underrated system that a lot of people just kind of passed on, which is kind of crazy to think about because that system was a huge failure for Nintendo compared to their past successes, and then they went on to make the Switch and reverse that, and now Nintendo is still one of the biggest names in video gaming ever. But the Wii U was an interesting take on video games because it's kind of like the precursor to the Switch, albeit a very primitive version of the Switch. You got the gamepad in the console. You can take the gamepad a little bit far away from the actual system before it starts to say, hey, you need to take me back to the system. There were some very unique games on that system. I never played it back in the day when it was still relevant. I got it much later when I found it for super cheap. And I've enjoyed my time with it. It's actually a pretty cool system that I think is underrated. And I think a lot of those features didn't go with the Nintendo Switch line of consoles, and a lot of people wish that they did. So my runner-up for the best game on the Wii U has to go to Shovel Knight. This was the first time that I played this game, and I know that it's been released on several consoles ever since. I believe it also came out for the PS Vita back in the day, which is interesting, but I really enjoyed this game quite a bit. It was a very refreshing take on a 2D platformer with the shovel and all the abilities that you can get. The level design is great. The music is just out of this world, man. That first theme in Shovel Knight, when you go to the first world, is such a frickin' banger, man. It's one of the best soundtracks that I've heard in a game like this. And I think this is one of the trendsetters of this style. Shovel Knight came out with this wonderful retro style game, and now there's so many of them. And we've always had those since the early days when they were actually relevant, the 2D style games. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this game really kind of revitalized that style, and there's been a ton of 8-bit style games ever since. And of course, the winner on the Wii U has to go to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. People forget that this was a Wii U game that was later ported to the Switch. They think it's a Switch game, but no, it actually came out on the Wii U first. And I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Zelda. I never have been. I never liked that style of gameplay where it's a story and you have an object that you have to do. You have something to do. You know, you have to go get this. But you know, before you spend the time to go get this, you got to go do this and do this first. These little, you know, miniature tasks that you have to do to get the big task done. That seems to be a theme in a lot of these particular 3D Zelda games, and that's never been for me. I never could get too deep into that. It bored me to tears, you know, and I felt like it's kind of a lazy way to go through a story by giving you something big that will advance the story, but before you can do that, you have to do these 2 little tasks or 3 little tasks first. Maybe it's just me. I'm sure I'm going to get roasted alive in the comment section for saying that, but Zelda games just never did it for me. But Breath of the Wild is the one 3D game in the Zelda franchise that I've actually enjoyed. It still has a lot of those problems, albeit you can't go up into the mountains unless you find a way to keep warm, you know, and, you know, a lot of people are going to destroy me for saying that, but that kind of turned me off, you know. If it was an open world, I would like to explore everything, but there's so many miniature things that you have to accomplish, and that makes it more tedious. And I did not like the fact that your weapons broke after you use them for too long, and you have to struggle to find new weapons and try to keep that up. I would just rather have a weapon that stays with me until I can upgrade it to something else. But it's still a great game, and it's the best game on the Wii U to this day. Now we're moving into something a little more retro with the Sega Saturn. I didn't have one back in the day, and I think that's the common thing with this system is nobody really knew somebody that had a Saturn back in the day. I went straight from the Sega Genesis to the Sega Dreamcast, and I think that's marketing, my friends. The Sega Saturn was just not marketed well, but then again, I don't remember if it was or not because I was too young. I was born in 92, and the Saturn came out in like 95 or something like that? It makes sense that I was around for the Dreamcast and was all hyped up about it because I grew up playing the Sega Genesis in the 90s. Sega Saturn, I am so glad that I went back to revisit that console because it is truly amazing. It's some of the best 2D games that you'll ever find, ever, on that system, and it's an underrated system. It needs a lot more love, and we're going to start loving it right now with these two games. The first runner-up is a Japanese Sega Saturn exclusive called Bulk Slash. Now, if you've heard anybody talk about the fact that the Sega Saturn is amazing at 2D games, but it sucks at 3D games, I would highly encourage you to check out this game because it does 3D exceptionally well. The frame rate is very stable, and it's gorgeous, man. It's a beautiful game, and, you know, like I said, it's a Japanese exclusive, but we did get a really nice fan translation in English with voice actors, no less, which is crazy. I highly recommend you check out that version. So you're in a mech type situation where you can walk on the ground or fly in the air. It's recommended to fly through most of it, though. And you pick up these young ladies that act as your navigators, and you can collect them. There's a bunch of them throughout each and every given level, but they speak to you. They tell you where your next goal is. It's a really unique gameplay experience and one of my favorites on that system, and it's one that I go back to quite a bit. As far as the winner goes for the Sega Saturn, I've got to choose Liquid Kids, and I know that's crazy. And it's not even a Sega Saturn exclusive, it's a port of a Japanese arcade game that I can't pronounce in Japanese, but over here they called it Liquid Kids. Liquid Kids is the coolest arcade game, 2D arcade game that I've ever played. It's got a cutesy vibe, you know, super Japanese cutesy animal vibe and everything, and the music is just bizarre. It is so bizarre and cutesified with all those different sound effects and stuff. But I gotta say, man, after really sitting down to listen to the soundtrack, it's a masterpiece. The soundtrack in this game was composed by one Japanese woman, and I forget her name, so I'll have to apologize about that. But it's crazy to think about that this soundtrack was composed by one person, and it's so good. Like, it's so good, and it fits the vibe perfectly for every single level. The music is perfect for every single level. It's amazing. I've been working on some guitar arrangements of this stuff because it's just that interesting to me. It's bizarre, you know, it's different. But I digress. If you've never played Liquid Kids before, it's a wonderful 2D platformer for the system, and I can say that I finally beat that game. It took me forever because it is challenging in the later levels, but I did beat that game. One of my favorite experiences on the Sega Saturn, bar none. Next, we're talking about the good old PlayStation 1, the original Sony Playstation system. Symphony of the Night is the runner-up, and I know a lot of you are going to go crazy about that. You know, Symphony of the Night is probably one of the best games ever made. And on the PlayStation, it's amazing. It's truly amazing, and we were really lucky to get that game at that time. It's one of the best Metroidvanias. I think it is the first Metroidvania, but it's so much fun, and the story is great. The monsters are all unique. The level design is peak gaming. There's not much I have to say about Symphony of the Night that has not already been said by anybody that's a fan of video games, and if you've never played it, then you're missing out, and that's all there is to it. So what game could make me put Symphony of the Night in the runner-up position and not the winner? It's very simple. That game is called The Legend of Dragoon on the Sony PlayStation 1. One of the best RPGs, one of the best underrated RPGs of all time. This is one of my favorite RPGs, and I think it's my favorite JRPG that has ever been released. The story is so compelling, and it really draws you in. This is one of the first times that I really connected with characters in an RPG and thought of it as like a movie instead of just like a game that's silly. You know, these characters have depth to them, and they grow as characters. They have character development, and they have relationships with each other, and the combat system is so freaking awesome. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the hottest RPG in the world right now, which is Clair Obscur, I'm pretty sure that that game has taken a lot of inspiration from Legend of Dragoon, and it's often called a spiritual successor to that game. If you've never played The Legend of Dragoon, it is one of the coolest 4-disc RPGs out there, and it's got a banging soundtrack as well. You can find some covers if you want to see me play acoustic guitar, Legend of Dragoon. A lot of you praise me for using that music in these videos. You can find that music video down in the comment section below. Moving on to the Nintendo 64, a lot of people's favorite retro console for sure. This console has my favorite video game of all time, and it's not made by Nintendo. Yeah. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what in the world could that be? Because most of the third-party stuff on that system is not that great. This is fondly remembered as the Super Mario 64 console, as well as the Mario Kart console and all that good stuff too. But the runner-up for my favorite game on this system goes to Castlevania. A lot of people call it Castlevania 64, but the title is literally just Castlevania. It's such a great 3D platformer, man, with the Castlevania name, and that's what you have to remember. A lot of people hate this game, unjustifiably so. They talk bad about it, which is crazy because, you know, the camera's bad, but that's every N64 game. The camera just isn't that great because you only have one analog stick and you have to use buttons to reposition your camera. That's every game. Super Mario 64 had that as well. And I don't think that the Super Mario 64 camera is that different from the Castlevania camera. I think people just picked this game to beat up on it for no reason at all. Maybe because it didn't play exactly like the Castlevania games on the system previous to that on the Super Nintendo with Super Castlevania 4. I don't know. But I will say that I have a YouTube short talking all about Castlevania on the Nintendo 64, and a lot of people are praising it. I don't know where they're coming from, but people are coming out of the woodwork to talk about how great this game actually is and that it doesn't deserve the hate. So I can really stand behind that. I really love this game. It was a big part of my childhood, and it's my second favorite game on that system. My favorite game on the Nintendo 64 has to go to Hybrid Heaven. I've done a dedicated video about this game. It is my favorite game of all time. At the heart of it, it's a fighting RPG. That's all it is. It is a strategy fighting RPG. So you get into a room with the monster, and it's time to throw some fisticuffs, man. And you can learn all sorts of different moves. You can do punches and kicks and grappling moves, but in order to really learn those moves, you have to have them performed on you. So that's where the strategy comes in. Can I afford to be hit right now? Am I going to lose my health? Or should I take this fight to level up and not learn any moves? That's the entire game. And it's so freaking awesome. It's like a 90s movie starring Keanu Reeves. That's how I like to describe it. The story's bonkers. It's insane, but it's such a great game, man, and super underrated. I think it was really passed on at the time because of Metal Gear Solid and all the other stuff that was coming out at the time, but it's still a great game. Highly recommend it. If you want a really cool, unique experience on your Nintendo 64, you need to play Hybrid Heaven. Now we're moving on to the Super Nintendo. I did not have one of these as a child. I was a Sega Genesis kid, but we'll keep it brief for this section because I don't have a lot of memories with this console other than what I've played in the last 6 or 7 years or so. But my runner-up has to go to Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This is a Zelda game that I can get behind. I like this 2D style. And admittedly, yes, it's still the same formula where you have to go collect and do things before you can reach the end or whatever. I know what I'm sounding like. I'm sounding like I don't like video games because a lot of video games follow this premise. But Link to the Past did it right, if that makes sense. I'm trying my best to explain this and probably doing a terrible job. I think what I'm thinking of is Ocarina of Time. I did not like Ocarina of Time because of all the tasks that you have to do before you can move out of this area, yada yada yada. But Link to the Past, I mean, it's such a great game and everybody here knows that. The best game on the Super Nintendo has to go to Chrono Trigger, and I think we all knew that was coming. This is the best 2D RPG of all time, and it would be very difficult to argue with that. It's got the best soundtrack, it's got the best story, it's got the best combat system. We can always go back to Chrono Trigger if we want a wonderful RPG, and it started on the Super Nintendo. Now we're moving on to the Sega Genesis. This is my first video game console. Very difficult to pick just 2 games that I really love for this console, but I managed to do it. The runner-up, of course, is Golden Axe. This is one of my first video games that I ever played. Of course, it's an arcade game that was ported to the Sega Genesis, but a lot of people have fond memories of that game on the Sega Genesis, even saying that it's better than the arcade because of the extra levels that you get at the end. I really do love Golden Axe. The soundtrack was a huge inspiration for me to play my own music, and I've done a Golden Axe cover song. If you want to check that out, I'll put that in the link in the description below. Really do love that game and its soundtrack. And of course, the best game on this system is Streets of Rage 2, bar none. Up until Streets of Rage 4, this was the best beat-em I've ever made, but I honestly think that Streets of Rage 4 has surpassed Streets of Rage 2. If you've never played it before, you are vigilante cops going to beat up the bad guys because the cops are doing a bad job of it themselves. So you go through and you've got the dragon punches, and you can do jump kicks and special moves and stuff and grappling, and there's a ton of enemies in the game, and it's absolutely erratic, and it's a ton of fun to play with your friends as well. one of my favorite games of all time, Streets of Rage 2. Now we're moving on to some of the add-ons that went with the Sega Genesis. We'll keep this kind of brief, but we're starting with the Sega CD. I never had one of these as a kid. I just got one in the past couple years or so, and it is a really cool console that's kind of underrated, but at the same time it's justifiably not the best console ever because of the plethora of FMV-style games. Full motion video. Don't like that. It didn't age very well at all. But that being said, my runner-up for the time that I've spent with the Sega CD is Snatcher. A lot of people consider Snatcher to be the best game on the Sega CD, and they're probably right. I just can't say that myself because I haven't played it enough. I've played maybe 2 hours into the story so far, so I haven't beaten it yet. It's on my bucket list of things to beat. Snatcher is such a wonderful, wonderful Hideo Kojima game. It's such a unique game too, man. There's nothing like it, and I don't want to say too much about it because I haven't played it enough to say too much about it, but just know that I'm recognizing that it's a great game. I just haven't spent enough time with it yet. And the winner for Sega CD, in my opinion, is Dungeon Explorer. And a lot of people are going to crap on this decision, but this is the game that I've spent the most time with. Having that soundtrack, that CD soundtrack with this gauntlet-style gameplay in Dungeon Explorer is amazing. I've got a few of my friends to play it with me, and it was a fun time for the most part, but they're not as into it as I am, obviously. It's a good single-player game, too. If you just want a grindy game that isn't too involved with not a lot going on, Dungeon Explorer. It's a great game. Now we're on to the 32X. I don't like this console. A lot of people don't like this console, but you got to pick something, I guess. Runner-up is Knuckles Chaotix. It is a Sonic game without Sonic on this add-on, the 32X. It's a decent game. I think it gets a lot of hate. Having to be attached to another player is not the best time in the world. But I think the soundtrack is excellent, and for the most part, you can get used to the gameplay. It's so far removed from a typical Sonic game that a lot of people want nothing to do with it. And my favorite 32X game is not saying much because I don't really spend a lot of time playing the 32X, but I gotta hand it to Virtual Racing. It's a really, really cool game on the 32X, and it looks really good too. Other than that, there's really not much to say about the 32X, unfortunately. I'm not a big fan of it myself. Now we're moving on to some Neo Geo consoles. Now I've got the AES as well as the Neo Geo CD. With these two consoles, you got a lot of the same games, just different platforms. You got the CD version and the AES cartridge version, so it was kind of difficult to choose exclusives because that's not really true to how I feel about the games. I could have chosen exclusives for the CD system and the AES, but I just picked the games that I enjoyed the most on each respective system, regardless of whether or not they're exclusive on either platform, if that makes sense. So we're starting with the Neo Geo AES. The runner-up is King of Fighters 98. It's a beautiful fighting game. A lot of people seem to like King of Fighters 98 the most because of the roster. The music is orgasmic. It's a great fighting game, and if you've never played a Neo Geo game before, King of Fighters is a very, very different style of fighting game. But at the same time, you can jump right into it if you're used to Street Fighter, if that makes sense. There's a lot of characters to choose from, a lot of personality in this game. King of Fighters 98 is probably my favorite King of Fighters game. Now, we are talking about an exclusive for the winner on the Neo Geo AES, and that is, of course, Shock Troopers. It is a very interesting third-person shooter. It's kind of like Metal Slug in a way, but not really. You'll be going up in the level and doing that style of shooting, but then you'll go to do the horizontal stuff too. It's a very, very unique looking game. I like the art style of this one. Shock Troopers 2, of course, was the follow-up that I did not like as much. I feel like there was too much slowdown, and it just kind of lost a little bit of the charm that Shock Troopers had. This is my #1 game to pull down to play if we want a shooter to play co-op with another person. On the Neo Geo CD, the runner-up goes to Windjammers. That's probably the game that I've played the most on that system. The Neo Geo CD is an underrated system for sure. It gets a lot of hate because it's a 1x drive on this CD system, so the loading times can be atrocious, but I've remedied that with the Neo SD loader modification that allows you to load games from an SD card. It's a lot faster, albeit it's a very extensive mod and kind of difficult to do, but in the end, it's worth it. I'm glad to have friends that are excellent at modding, because that's not me. So Windjammers is basically tennis with a disc, you know, like a frisbee. And the gameplay is extremely addictive once you get into it and realize what all you can do, especially with that Neo Geo CD pad with the stick. You can do curves and stuff with this disc and send it flying in all sorts of different directions, confuse your opponent. This is a great multiplayer game, but you can also just play through it single player on the Neo Geo CD, as well as the AES, I believe. And the winner for the Neo Geo CD has to go to The Last Blade 2. This is my favorite Neo Geo fighting game. It beats King of Fighters, it beats Fatal Fury, all of that stuff. This is a weapons-based 2D fighter. The art style is extremely gorgeous. Everything is just so beautiful, the way that it flows together, and the characters are all unique and they have their own strengths and weaknesses. This is my go-to fighting game to play when I have a buddy over that wants to play some fighting games, and that's plain and simple. This is one of the best fighting games I've ever played in my entire life. Now we're moving on to the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. This was a system that I played as a kid, obviously after I had initially played the Sega Genesis, but I had a neighbor that lived right over there who was a little bit younger than me, and his dad had an NES, and that's where I first played the winner of this section on the NES. But before we do that, let's talk about a game that I didn't play until much, much later, and the runner-up, of course, is Fire in Ice. Fire, the letter N, Ice. Super weird platforming puzzle game where you control this little green wizard fella, and he can create blocks of ice, but he can also remove them. The idea is basically just to get to the end of a level, and you have to think with your noggin in order to remove the ice, and sometimes place ice in such ways that you can use them as platforms. It's a very interesting platforming game and puzzle game, and it's a puzzle platformer, I guess, and it's probably my second favorite game on the entire system, if we're being real. And of course, the number one game on the NES has to go to Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! I know, it's not a Mario game, but I'm not a Mario guy. I never really got into the Mario games as much as some of the other stuff, and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Is a much better time, in my opinion, than any of the Mario games on that system. I really love the characters in that game, and they all have their tells and their weaknesses, and it's up to you to try to figure out what's the best way to defeat them. Not only that, but then they come back after learning from getting their ass kicked by you, and they're a little bit better, and you have to do the same process again and try to figure out how to beat them again. An insane roster of characters that you have to play against and defeat, and of course the legendary Mike Tyson at the end. This is such a great game, and I really enjoyed the Punch-Out! Game on the Wii as well, but this one has a special place in my heart. I can always go back and have a great time with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! On the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Moving on to the original Xbox, I didn't have one as a kid, but my buddy Jonathan did, and the runner-up is his favorite Xbox game, original Xbox game, and that's called Breakdown. This is a first-person fighting game that's obviously inspired by PC gaming at the time, but this was one of the first games where it kind of felt like you were playing a PC game on a home console. You've got these really creepy aliens that are trying to kill you, and eventually you get guns and stuff, but for the most part, you have to use your fist and your legs to punch and kick and stuff, and it's a very, very unique fighting system. The controls are terrible. I mean, they're very bad. They take a little while to get used to because you have to incorporate clicking in the sticks to do certain things. For example, like guarding and stuff like that. The guys that are trying to kill you in this game, the aliens, until you get your superpowers, are scary as hell. Like they will beat you to death, and it is not a fun time. But Breakdown, it's one of the games that I would like to go through and beat all the way. I haven't gotten that far in this game, but as far as the exclusives on this Xbox, I have to hand it to Breakdown. That's my runner-up for sure. It's a great game. I've never played anything else like it. And the winner for the best game on the Xbox, in my opinion, is Jade Empire. I know you're probably going to be disgusted at the lack of Halo on this system. I did play quite a bit of Halo with some buddies of mine back in the day, but it was never my favorite. I never liked that game as much as some of the other games like Jade Empire. Jade Empire is a wonderful martial arts fighting RPG, much like Hybrid Heaven, without so much strategy. You can level up JRPG style or whatever, and it's a great
great fighting game too. You can pick different styles of fighting and everything like that. You can pick different characters. The depth in that game is crazy. You can talk to pretty much anyone in that game. Jade Empire is probably my favorite game on the entire system, if we're being real. Let me know if you've played it in the comment section below. Moving on to the Sony PlayStation 2, I got the Dreamcast, and after the Dreamcast was discontinued, I needed something to do, something to play, so I ended up getting the PlayStation 2. And of course, we all had a great time with the Grand Theft Auto games, and that's up there on my list for sure, but it's not in this list of runner-up and winner. The runner-up goes to Red Dead Revolver. Now, I love that game for the story and gameplay. I never got into the Red Dead Redemption games, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. I never got into those as much, and I know that's blasphemy to some people, but Red Dead Revolver is just such a great story. And I think the reason that I wasn't interested in the Red Dead Redemption games is because the main character, Red, from Red Dead Revolver, is no longer involved in the story. And I figured that is such a wasted opportunity because he is such an iconic badass character, you know. With a wonderful backstory. His parents were killed, and now he's off for vengeance, and he gets vengeance in the end of the first game, and there's so much more that could be done with that character, I feel like, but he was never utilized after that, which is a darn shame. Now, this is not a PlayStation 2 exclusive. Admittedly, you'll probably have a better time with it on the original Xbox, but the PlayStation 2 is where I played it. And for the winner on the PlayStation 2, bar none, hands down, it's a game called Oni, O-N-I. This is a Japanese weird 3D fighting game with guns that's very heavily inspired by anime. In fact, I'm pretty sure there were some comic books that came out surrounding this game and its characters, but you play as a Japanese girl named Kanoko, and she's an android, and you work for this FBI type situation, and there's a evil syndicate that's doing evil things run by your evil twin brother, and you have to destroy them all. And the fighting in this game is so unique. You punch with R1 and you kick with R2, you jump with L1, and you can slide on the ground with L2. So it's a very, very unique fighting system. I've never found a game that's quite like that. There are guns, but the guns are a secondary thing at best. You'll run out of ammo and have to use your fists at some point. I love all of the characters and their different fighting styles in this game. The level design, for the most part, is very great. On the PS2, it is a little slow as far as the frame rate when it gets hectic. There is a PC port of this game that is better on the frame rate side of things, but this game meant a lot to me as a kid. I played the hell out of this game. I even named my cat Kanoko after the main character. That's how much I love this game and how much it means to me. So if you've never played it before, I can highly recommend it. It's a very, very great game with a great story and great gameplay. PC Engine, TurboGrafx-16, obviously not a console that I enjoyed as a kid. Didn't even know it existed, but my God, what a great rival to the Genesis and the original Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. This console could play those games, and graphically, you'd be surprised how wonderful some of these games actually look and play on this system. So the runner-up has to be Ninja Spirit for me. This is a wonderful action platformer. It's got the ninja vibes for sure. The enemies are very difficult. But what's interesting about the game is that they reappear if you backtrack. This game, the object is not to kill the enemies, it's just to make it to the end of the level and beat the boss. So with that in mind, you might approach this game with a different mindset. You don't have to kill everything. And in fact, backtracking to kill enemies is just going to make more enemies show up. But I'm happy to say that I finally beat this game to the very end, and it's one of my favorite games on this console, bar none. The winner for the PC Engine, and I guess the PC Engine CD system, has to be Castlevania Rondo of Blood. This is such a wonderful Castlevania game. It's my favorite Castlevania game. If we're talking just 2D games and no Metroidvania stuff, Rondo of Blood has the best soundtrack. It has the best lead character in Richter Belmont. It is such a freaking awesome game. The enemies are relentless. It's a very difficult game, and I've beaten it one time. and it was very, very difficult. But I would love to go back and play this game some more. Let me know what you guys think. What's the best Castlevania game out there, and why is it Rondo of Blood on the PC Engine CD? Now we're moving on to the Nintendo GameCube. I never had this as a kid because, like I said, I was into the Dreamcast and then the PlayStation 2. But I got one much later on, and I have to say that the GameCube is very underrated, especially for somebody like me. I just associated it with Mario stuff. But for the most part, it's got a lot of really cool games on it, like the runner-up that we have here, Chibi Robo. Chibi Robo is so freaking bizarre. You play as a robot that basically cleans up after a family, and you would think that that gameplay is going to be very sparse and not fun, but they somehow managed to make it very fun, you know? And you know how Nintendo GameCube games are, some of them are just overly bizarre. This is definitely one of them, but the soundtrack is very interesting. I like how they implement that soundtrack as your character is cleaning up things. There's an acoustic guitar that plays as you're mopping up stains on the floor. I know what this sounds like. If you've never played it before, it's like, why the hell would you play a game where you are basically a glorified robot butler? You got to check it out, though. Give it a chance before you write it off, because it's a cute game, man. There's a lot of charm to it, and I really do like Chibi Robo quite a bit. So the winner for the GameCube has to be Super Monkey Ball. Super Monkey Ball is a very, very strange game, very unique game. There's not a lot of games that utilize this, but basically you're a monkey in a like gotcha type ball, you know, like a vending machine. You go to the vending machine, put in a quarter, and you get like a little toy that comes in this little ball. That's essentially what Super Monkey Ball is, except instead of controlling the character as you move through the level, what you have to realize is that you're controlling the level itself. So if the monkey ball is right here, you actually tilt the earth that's underneath you, and that's what makes the ball move. So that's a really, really strange mechanic that is utilized very, very well in this game. Now, admittedly, I love the base game, but for me, the best part of it is the party game, specifically Monkey Target, where you take that monkey and the ball and you go down a ramp and fly up into the air, and then your ball opens up and forms two wings, and it's like you're flying an airplane at that point, and your object is to land that monkey on some targets to get points. It's such a great party game to play with your friends. Me and my buddies really do enjoy playing some 4-player Super Monkey Ball Monkey Target. Now we're going to talk about the Game Boy in general, and I'm lumping this all into one. So I'm talking about the original Game Boy, the Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance. Instead of doing each separate Game Boy, I figured I'd just lump them all together, because I did have some great memories with some Game Boy stuff, but I never got too deep into the library of the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance separately, if that makes sense. But so my runner-up for the best Game Boy experience is Harmony of Dissonance, Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. Now, there are 3 Castlevania games on this system, and I forget what they're called. I know that it's Harmony of Dissonance and Aria of Sorrow, I believe, and then the first one that I obviously can't remember. But Harmony of Dissonance was my first Castlevania game on this system, and a lot of people dog it because the soundtrack sucks, but I highly disagree. The Circle of the Moon. Circle of the Moon, that was the first one. I'm sorry. Harmony of Dissonance has a great soundtrack, and it's kind of an experimental soundtrack compared to what you would expect from a Castlevania game, but I really enjoyed the protagonist. I enjoyed playing this game all the way through when I was a kid. This is one of my greatest memories on the Game Boy Advance back in the day. And of course, if we're picking Game Boy stuff, I have to name the original 2 generations of Pokemon as my favorite Game Boy games of all time. It's impossible for me to pick between the first and second generation because they are both so good and so needed, and they can go hand in hand with each other. Once you beat the first generation, you can take that save file and then you can trade and get yourself some Pokemon from the Gen 1 into the Gen 2 games. Like, it goes on and on. These are great games, and it's impossible for me to pick which one I like the best. However, I will say that as far as which iteration of the game, I got to go with Pokemon Red and Pokemon Gold. Those are my 2 favorite games, with Crystal being a close second. I have so many fond memories with that game, particularly Pokemon Gold, particularly with the vibes, man. It has that classic Japanese style and flavor in that second generation. I never got too deep into Pokemon after that, but I will say that I can still go back and play Pokemon Gen 1 and 2 anytime and have a blast with it. So now we're talking about the Nintendo DS briefly here. The runner-up is Rhythm Heaven. If you've never played Rhythm Heaven, it's a rhythm game on the DS, and it requires you to use the stylus. I'm a guitar teacher. I've been a guitar player for over 20 years now, 21 or 22 years now, and rhythm was not something that I got instantly. It took me a while to understand rhythm, and I never learned how to read standard notation, which is how you read music. It explains both notes and rhythm and how to play them. I never got the rhythm part. I had to do rhythm all by myself. And I wish that I had a lot of DSs that I could lend out to my students and have them play Rhythm Heaven, because it is a really, really good game that shows you how to play rhythm. It's really weird, you know. There's been a lot of Rhythm Heaven games that have come out. I think there's one on the Wii U, and we're expecting one to come out on the Switch 2 very soon. But Rhythm Heaven on the DS is one of my favorite games on that system, just for that reason. It's a great rhythm game, and it's so challenging and fun to play, and it's one, if you mess it up, you want to go back and see if you can do it right immediately afterwards. Such a great game, Rhythm Heaven. And of course, for the DS, the best game has to be Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It's just more of the same, but better. That's all I can really say about it. I've really enjoyed my second playthrough of Heart Gold on the DS, and this is an expensive game these days, which is crazy, but it's probably the best remake, the best single remake of any game out there, and I would love to hear what you guys think really deserves that title, but it'd be hard to argue with Heart Gold and Soul Silver, man. They took everything out of an already great game with Pokemon Gold, and they added more content while still keeping the same flavor and everything. This is definitely one of the DS games that I play the most, is the Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold games, for sure. And you know me, we're keeping the best for last. The very last system. This is so hard for me to do. And I can't believe that I'm doing this, but I'm having to pick two of my favorite games on my favorite console of all time, and that's the Sega Dreamcast. There are so many great games on this console, man. It's so difficult to choose, and I've got videos on all sorts of different games for the system that I really enjoy if you want to learn more other than the two that I'm about to spout off right here. But my runner-up has to go to Virtua Tennis. I love Virtua Tennis so much. It is such a wonderful game of tennis. It's got all sorts of charm. It's got characters. It's very simple, yet it's challenging. It's difficult to master, but it's extremely easy to pick up and play. I've beaten this game 100%. I can go through the arcade on very hard and beat everybody. Virtua Tennis 2 came out not long after this, but I think that the first one is still my favorite. My favorite character is one of the characters that doesn't exist. You know, you've got a roster of real players, and then you've got characters that you can unlock that are just made by Sega that aren't actually real life people. My favorite character to play is Davor Tesla in that red shirt, man, with the wide angle shots. He is so good at those wide angle shots, and it's so fun to pull those off. This is my second favorite game on the system. I've thought about this for a long time, and it's the truth, man. I love Virtua Tennis, and I'm so happy that I found that game, because the soundtrack is amazing, the gameplay is awesome, and it's addictive. It's a fun game of tennis. What else can I say? And my favorite game on my favorite console of all time has to go to Jet Grind Radio or Jet Set Radio. If you've never played this game, you are a child that is doing vandalism on roller skates that have special powers. What's not to love about that? Eventually the police get involved, and then the army, and then you find out that there's a conspiracy that you have to unravel. It's such a great game, man. It's beautiful cel-shaded graphics that are amazing to look at on this system. Now, there was a sequel on the original Xbox that I just did not care for at all. It just did not have the same charm as Jet Grind Radio on the Sega Dreamcast. It was more open worldy, and this game is such a great linear story. And I think we're missing a lot of linear stories these days in favor of making games too freaking big and open world. If you're a fan of the open world stuff, that's fine, but I need a linear story every once in a while. I need to jump from from this place to this place to this place, and then I can save and go to bed, or I can go do my YouTube stuff. You know, the open world stuff has always been very overwhelming to me. But Jet Grind Radio is exactly the opposite of that, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's one of the few games that I've kept from my childhood as far as physical copies go. I'll never sell it. The memories that went with it are priceless. You know, I would play this game as a kid growing up, and it's the game that I would keep coming back to into my teenage years, and now I'm in my 30s, and I still go back and play this game every once in a while because I love the soundtrack, I love the graphics, I love the characters, and the gameplay. And that's where it's at, man. The gameplay is so amazing. You get to do all these crazy tricks while trying to paint stuff, and helicopters are shooting missiles and shit at you. You know, it's amazing, man. It really is. But if I had to choose, that's probably the best game on the Sega Dreamcast. And that's even passing by Shenmue and Sonic Adventure and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That's my pick. It really is. Jet Grind Radio is the best game on that system just for the gameplay and the music alone. Well, we're finally done with that gigantic list of, I think, 52 games out of all the consoles that I own. Well, I would really love to know what you guys think as far as my picks and how good or bad that they might be. What would you replace them with? What are some of your favorite games of all time? And have you ever played any of the obscure consoles on this list, such as the Neo Geo AES or the PC Engine, or I guess we could even talk about the Wii U in that regard? I'd love to know the answers to all those questions and all of your comments in the comment section below. Thank you so much for being a part of this YouTube channel and subscribing, and I'll catch you guys at the very next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.